David Letterman first gained national attention as a comedian through appearances on The Tonight Show starring J.CARSON. By 1980, his growing fame and somewhat different approach to comedy encouraged NBC to offer him his own show. Letterman remained with NBC until he was denied his opportunity to take over The Tonight Show upon Carson's 1992 retirement. Instead, he left his show, Late Night with David Letterman, and went to CBS, creating The Late Show with David Letterman. He took with him an element of his weekend program created by a staff of writers, the nightly top 10 list, allegedly created in a fictional home office in varying locales. From its introduction on late night, Letterman's nightly lists were wildly popular and stemmed imitations and variations around the country. The popular format remains widely imitated today. Letterman popularized, it's very ironic, isn't it? Letterman popularized the format and continued to use it 5 nights a week until he retired from The Late Show, the last broadcast of which occurred on the 20th of May 2015. Here are 10 facts about David Letterman. Number 10. Several elements of his programs were inspired by a regional talk show he watched as a youth. David Letterman grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. His Midwestern youth included working as a stock bag boy in a local supermarket, the Atlas supermarket in the Kessler neighborhood. It also included entertainment on television offered by the Cincinnati-based Crosley, later Avco broadcasting system. The network broadcast daytime talk and entertainment programs from its Cincinnati studios to affiliates in Columbus and Dayton, Ohio, as well as Indianapolis, WLWI, Channel 13. On occasion, the programs were broadcast from outside the Cincinnati studios, such as from the Ohio State Fair in Columbus or from Indianapolis. Among the programs Letterman watched, often with his mother, was The Paul Dixon Show, a morning program originally half an hour long, though later expanded to 90 minutes. The show was mainly Dixon interacting with his audience, mostly housewives mugging from his desk and performing mostly live commercials. The entire program was live, with the exception of a few pre-recorded bits from time to time. Dixon awarded members of his audience a kosher salami after interviewing them, and acts later mimicked by Letterman when he gave audience members canned hams or boxes of meat. Dixon frequently referred to his own program as This Dumb Show, another bit of shtick Letterman routinely used. Letterman often acknowledged his debt to the Paul Dixon Show, going so far as to credit the program with influencing his choice of career. Number 9. His feud with Oprah Winfrey was on again, off again, and on again. Letterman's feud with Oprah Winfrey was both real and play acting, depending on the date and the sources involved. Oprah said it began after an appearance by her on Letterman's show, during which his interviewing technique made her uncomfortable. Letterman told interviews the feud began several years later, when he stuck Oprah with the check for himself and his girlfriend's lunch. In 1995, Letterman hosted the Academy Awards, where he made several jokes at Oprah's expense, and in the 1990s, she was a frequent target of his jibes during his monologues. Oprah later told Time magazine that she was uncomfortable being the butt of his jokes and thus had no interest in appearing on his show. Both Letterman and Oprah used the feud for publicity purposes. The feud was declared over when Oprah agreed to appear on Letterman in December 2005 as part of the publicity campaign for the stage production of The Color Purple, which Oprah produced on Broadway. However, both stars continued to use it for publicity purposes, as did CBS. Number 8. He created a scholarship program at Ball State University for the benefit of just average students, as he claimed he was. David Letterman graduated from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, where he was, by his own admission, just an average student as measured by his GPA. So when he endowed a scholarship at Ball State University, he mandated that its award would not be based on grades or needs. Instead, the scholarship, open to telecommunications students, is based on creativity. Noting his own grades were such that few scholarships were available to him, Letterman created his scholarship with his own situation in mind. Students applying for the scholarship must submit a creative project for consideration. The scholarship is actually awarded to 3 students, the winner and a first and second runner-up. Letterman first sponsored the scholarship back in 1985. In 2022, through his motor racing partnership, Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, another scholarship was announced in support of Ball State's esports program. The scholarship is scheduled to be awarded to 2 Ball State student athletes each year through the 2025 to 2026 academic year. Number 7. His television career began as a weatherman in Indianapolis. Letterman graduated from Ball State in 1969, after which he began a radio talk show in Indianapolis and served as a weatherman on WLWI, later changed to WTHR. As a presenter, rather than a trained meteorologist, his weather broadcasts were often irreverent as he focused on entertainment value rather than a simple recitation of weather events and forecasts. He once reported a tropical storm being upgraded to a hurricane by congratulating it on its promotion. He predicted hailstones in an upcoming storm could be the size of canned hams and invented the names of towns and amount of precipitation that they received. When a satellite map failed to present the border between Indiana and Ohio, he attributed the absence to political shenanigans. He mumbled about it being a plot instigated by local and state authorities over which he had no control. Besides doing the weather, he hosted a children's program and a Saturday morning talk show called Clover Power, in which he interviewed 4-H members. As the host of a late-night movie program called Freeze-Dried Movies, he once acted out scenes from Godzilla using plastic dinosaur models. Number 6. He auditioned for the lead role in the comedy film Airplane, as well as appearing in several game shows. In 1975, Letterman and his first wife Michelle relocated to Los Angeles. He began appearing regularly at the Comedy Store, performing stand-up routines and working as a writer for comedian Jimmy Walker. In that role, he was joined by later rival Jay Leno, as well as several other comedians. He hosted a game show pilot, which failed to be produced, and appeared in several game shows on programs which were. Among them was Hollywood Squares, The Gong Show, and Liars Club. In 1980, he auditioned for the film Airplane, receiving a screen test for the role, later taken by Robert Hayes. The role was the lead for the film, a former military pilot with a drinking problem, Ted Stryker. The drinking problem referred to his inability to hit his mouth with a glass, instead throwing the beverage into his own face. The film became a smash hit, both with audiences and critics, but beyond the screen test, Letterman wasn't involved with the project. Although he appeared in several sitcoms as a guest role, Letterman failed to gain much success as an actor throughout the 1970s. His work in stand-up did gain attention, and eventually those noticing him included Johnny Carson, then host of The Tonight Show. Letterman's first appearance on Carson's program occurred in November 1978. He would appear on the program as a guest more than 20 times over the next few years. Number 5. His first nationality broadcast show was a daytime talk show similar to those that he watched years earlier. In 1980, NBC's morning lineup following the venerable Today Show consisted of 6 game shows spanning 3 hours of broadcast time. By then, Letterman had made numerous appearances on The Tonight Show, including as a guest host. With a relationship with NBC thus established, studio executives decided to give Letterman his own show, a morning talk show. To gain room in the schedule, 3 game shows were cancelled, including the long-running daytime version of Hollywood Squares. Originally, The David Letterman Show ran for 90 minutes. Its first broadcast took place on June 23rd, 1980. An immediate success with critics, it struggled to find an audience. It was during the run of the show that Letterman introduced many of the sketches and skits which gained fame in his later shows, including Stupid Petrix. Nonetheless, ratings foundered, and in August the show was cut to 1 hour. In October, NBC announced the show would be cancelled. Its last broadcast on October 24th. For the final 3 weeks of the show, Letterman pulled out all the stops. He held a contest to have the show held in a private home. He produced a tape segment in a home in Cresco, Iowa. After cancellation, NBC paid Letterman $1 million to remain under contract protection against losing his services to another network or syndication. Number 4. His staff at Late Night with David Letterman based the top 10 list on eligible Bachelor lists of the day. Late Night with David Letterman premiered on NBC on February 1st, 1982, immediately following Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. Unlike Carson, who broadcast his show from Burbank, California, Letterman chose to use New York as his base, taping his show in NBC's Studio 6A. Among the staff hired by Letterman for his show was head writer Steve O'Donnell. O'Donnell claimed later that the idea of the top 10 list sprang up in the minds of several staff writers simultaneously, inspired by the most eligible Bachelor lists then printed in newspaper society pages. It quickly became a centerpiece of the nightly broadcasts, usually delivered by Letterman, but on occasion by members of the staff, surprise guests, and taped celebrities. The top 10 list went with Letterman when he abandoned NBC for CBS, though he was forced to change its name briefly. By then, its popularity was such that newspapers and magazine columnists, sport writers, entertainers, and broadcasters adapted its format using a top 10 list to cover stories with virtually unlimited scope. Number 3. NBC tried to block Letterman from using the top 10 list when he changed networks after Johnny Carson retired. When Johnny Carson announced his retirement, it was widely assumed that David Letterman would be his successor at The Tonight Show. When he was not, the chair going to Jay Leno, Letterman decided to take his show to a rival network, CBS, in a time slot which directly competed with Leno. NBC, angry at losing Letterman and concerned about the competition, tried to block Letterman from using several of the sketches developed on Late Night. Among them was the top 10 list. NBC claimed the list, both name and format, was the intellectual property of the network. He made similar claims for other staples of the show, including some of those created for the earlier daytime show. Letterman countered that the top 10 list couldn't be the network's property, since the idea had been stolen from other sources. Number 2. He hosted the Academy Awards and drew heavy criticism that he trivialized the event. David Letterman served as the Master of Ceremonies for the Academy Awards, commonly called the Oscars, in 1995. As part of the broadcast, he presented a top 10 list. Top 10 signs the movie you are watching will not win an Academy Award. His announcement of the list drew one of the loudest rounds of applause he received all evening. The rest of the evening was not so well received, not by his live audience, the television audience, or critics. He later referred to his performance at the event as an explosion of excrement, one joke which caused eyes to roll and audible groans from the audience added to the feud with Oprah Winfrey. Letterman used the disastrous outlining as fodder for self-deprecating jokes for several years. It was long believed that Letterman's performance at the Oscars prevented the Academy from ever asking him to host again. In fact, Letterman was asked to return as host, but he declined. Number 1. Johnny Carson's last appearance on television was to deliver a top 10 list on Letterman's show. On May 13th, 1994, David Letterman announced the top 10 list was being delivered by Johnny Carson. As the band played the Tonight Show theme, Bud Melman, Calvert Forrest, carried the list to Letterman. After the apparent joke on the audience was over, Letterman noticed the card he received did not contain the list for the evening and called for it again. This time, Johnny Carson came out, delivering the list to Letterman amidst raucous applause from the standing audience. Carson exchanged a few words with Letterman, briefly sat at his desk, acknowledged the applause several times, and after shaking his head, saying "No, no, no," left the stage. Carson had appeared on Letterman's show to be interviewed before, though never on the program hosted by Jay Leno. Letterman's show had been broadcasting from Los Angeles that week, which allowed Carson to appear on the show, and the appearance had been planned in advance. Whether Letterman hoped he would stay for conversation is unknown, but Letterman long revered Carson as both a friend and mentor, often saying that he owed his career to the former Tonight Show star. The brief visit was Johnny Carson's last appearance on television. He died in January 2005.